90 years ago this week, 3 times as many people as died in the Twin Towers inferno lost their lives in a huge naval battle off the coast of Denmark. Nearly 9,000 British and German sailors died after the 2 largest fleets in the world, numbering 250 armoured vessels in all, pelted each other with high explosive shells for a day and a night, sinking or disabling a fifth of the ships that took part. At stake was the maintenance of a sea blockade of Germany, which, had the British lost, would have had more impact on the outcome of the war than any of the campaigns on the Western Front. Yet despite the reawakening of interest in the land battles of World War I, Jutland has seldom been remembered the way we like to look back on, say, the Somme or Passchendaele. Last week, however, a new exhibition, The Ghosts of Jutland, opened in London aboard HMS Belfast. It's an old-fashioned exhibition in many ways, heavy on explanatory text, maps and one glass case that the small boy in me particularly enjoyed because it contained a complete set of tiny scale models of every ship in the British and German fleets. Without wishing to lapse into gender stereotyping, Liz Jensen, is this an exhibition one for the girls, do you think?
Not really. Parts of it are, actually. I was very, very moved. I was less interested, honestly, in all the naval warfare and so on, and the military tactics. What I was particularly interested in, and very, very, very moved by, were the testimonials of the men who had been in that battle, most of them now dead, although there is one surviving gentleman called Henry Allingham who actually turned up to the opening, and there he was, and there's a hologram of him looking much more orange than he does in real life in the exhibition. There were letters from the sailors to their mothers and to their loved ones and so on, and then a devastatingly sad letter written by a mother who had 2 sons in this battle and a husband who was also a naval officer. And after she'd learnt of the death of her son Archie, she wrote to her remaining son Bertie. And I have to say I cried when I read this. "My dearest and only boy, we can't tell each other in writing what we're feeling today. My world was divided into 3 parts, and the 3rd has crumbled away."
Yeah, there were some the personal testimonials, of which there are a number on audio clip, were one of the most moving parts of the exhibition. Liz Forgan, how did you enjoy it?
Well, the first wonderful thing is that it's in HMS Belfast, so you go down this companionway and you're surrounded by steel and iron, and it's all like a boat, and so it's very atmospheric. Like Liz, I'm not interested in naval battles, but these are very well told. I mean, it's a kind of cat and mouse psychological battle between the 2 commanders, which is interesting. But I agree with Liz. Some of the most marvellous bits of it are the bits of testimony, and there's some oral history clips. And there's an absolutely wonderful story of Signaller Farmer of HMS Indefatigable, and in the middle of the battle, the commanding officer says to him, "Those flags up there on the top of the mast are tangled up. Signal Farmer, up you go and untangle them." So in the middle of the battle, he climbs right up to the top of the mast. As he's up there, boom, the ship is blown to pieces. And he's thrown into the water. And everyone else dies, but he survives. He's picked up by a German destroyer. And he tells this story in a kind of little matter-of-fact way. He says, "I let go once, but I got back on again." And he just talks to you as if he's reading the laundry list. It's tremendously affecting.
It was a huge battle, a massively important battle. The exhibition itself is, by contrast, extremely small. I mean, almost claustrophobically small in this basically very small room aboard HMS Belfast. Piers Plowright, did you find that the smallness of the exhibition an asset or otherwise?
I think it was an asset. Like Liz Forgan, I loved being in amongst. It's actually where the sailors slung their hammocks, I was told. You can see a few hooks and even a little stolen light bulb still up there. So there you were amongst the ordinary seamen seeing a great battle in a tiny space, and I thought that worked very well. And again, I loved some of the audio clips. There's Olive Shapley, a great name in the BBC, by the way, one of the great feature producers of bygone days, talking about how her brother Frank was given a white feather because he'd gone out with the Boy Scouts and he was rather large. So they said, "Why aren't you at the front?" So he joined up the same day, went to Jutland and was drowned. And she tells all this in 1 minute 14 seconds, and it's another perfect little story. It's always the miniatures, the tiny things that tell you about battles, rather, I think, a bit of Boy's Own with all the boats and things, but it's the little details that were lovely.
Yeah, the little details, unfortunately, were only a small part of the exhibition. I mean, most of it is actually given over to the naval strategies involved in the battle. I mean, did anybody find those things particularly involving?
Well, what was interesting to me is that, like so many battles, it was a muddle, wasn't it?
Completely. Yeah.
And it's lovely to see everything tabulated, but actually nobody really knew who won, and I think there's still a debate. It seems the British lost more, but the Germans sort of decided they couldn't crack the British Navy, and off they went.
I think it was a battle the Germans had to win rather than sort of get the better of, and of course they didn't win, they just withdrew, because they didn't realise that they actually had the larger British fleet, all of that fleet in front of them, and they knew they weren't going to blow all of them out of the water.
I have two particular... I had an uncle who wasn't at the battle, but he had a friend who was. And so I grew up with pictures and stories about the Battle of Jutland, and little Jack Cornwall, aged 16, who dies in the battle, staying at his gun, though heavily wounded, and dies there, was one of my childhood heroes. Arthur Mee's encyclopedia, which I used to read, had a big picture of him. There he was, and his funeral, on a bit of film. It was things like that really took me right back to my childhood, I suppose.
I mean, I think you're being too hard on it for being conventional. I mean, it does have naval maps and things like that, but it livens it up all the time by playing out the battle as this war between these two admirals playing with each other, one trying to tempt the other one out and the other one not falling for it. It's not just people shoving things around on maps. There are two human minds there trying to outwit each other, and that's beautifully told through those maps.
And there's one other little parallel with United 93, which was there was a great confusion and distrust amongst the signallers.
That's right, there was an incorrect decryption.
That's right,
there?
The director of naval intelligence, or whatever he was, did not like his civilian code breakers. They wouldn't listen to them. A bit like what was going on in the film, when the military and the civilians were at loggerheads over what to do about the plane.
Well, it sounds as if we all enjoyed the Jutland exhibition. The exhibition Ghosts of Jutland is on board HMS Belfast on the Thames, just next to Tower Bridge in London until next summer.